There are moments in life when time seems to slow down, when something unexpected hits, knocking the breath out of you, leaving the world around you a blur. You might not remember every detail, but you'll never forget the feeling. Maybe it was a phone call in the dead of night, a look that made you question everything, or a silence so heavy it shattered your trust. But here's something most people never realize. In that exact moment, when everything feels out of your control, you're standing before one of the greatest choices of your life. Not the power to change what happened, but the power to change how you meet it. The world calls it instinct. Emotions scream for a reaction. But there's another path, quieter, narrower, and often overlooked. The path of stillness in the storm. The path where you don't let the first wave of feelings sweep you away. Instead, you pause, you breathe, you respond. This is where an ancient flame flickers back to life. A philosophy born from ruins and hardships, carried through the centuries by those who refuse to be broken. It's not just a set of teachings, it's a way of being, a method of navigating life with clarity when the skies go dark. It's called Stoicism, and today we don't just talk about it, we live it. We journey into the mind of those who faced adversity with grace and emerged not just intact, but transformed. We explore a simple yet profound idea, that you don't have to react. You can respond, not out of habit, but from depth, wisdom, and calm. Imagine if you could turn every challenge into a doorway, every wound into wisdom, every storm into a turning point. How would that change not just your life, but who you are becoming? This isn't just philosophy, it's a map for your soul. And right now, whether you realize it or not, you're holding it in your hands. Long ago, in the forgotten corners of marble courtyards, in the silence of ancient minds, a quiet fire was lit. It didn't roar or demand attention. It glowed steadily, like a lighthouse for those lost in the storm of life. That fire had a name, Stoicism. But don't mistake it for a religion or some rigid doctrine carved in stone. No, Stoicism was something far more subtle, far more enduring. It was the quiet voice of reason when chaos tried to drown everything out. It was the nod of someone who knew the battle wasn't out there, but within. I once watched a man sit through a public trial where his name was dragged through the mud. People shouted, accused, tried to tear him down. He didn't flinch. He didn't retaliate. He simply sat there, calm, as if listening to a familiar song he had long prepared for. And when he finally spoke, his words didn't fight back. They illuminated. That man didn't suppress his emotions. He had learned to understand them. He didn't react, he chose. Not because he didn't feel, but because he knew who he was beneath the storm. That, in essence, is the heart of Stoicism. Not the rejection of emotion, but the refinement of it. Not the denial of life's chaos, but the art of walking through it, unshaken. The Stoics taught that true strength lies not in the power to dominate others, but in the power to master ourselves. To stand tall, not because nothing moves us, but because we are anchored to something deeper, our values, our character, our choices. Think of someone you admire, not because of their status or wealth, but because of the way they move through life. Maybe they've never read a word of philosophy, but you can feel it in the way they speak, the way they carry silence, the way they forgive without forgetting. That is Stoicism, not in books, but in breath. And the journey doesn't require a temple or a textbook. It begins in the smallest of choices. A moment of pause instead of anger, a breath before you respond, a quiet reflection at the end of a loud day. Each time you do this, you're not just practicing a philosophy, you're becoming it. You're not running from life, you're meeting it, fully awake, deeply grounded, and ready to rise. Picture this, you're standing at the edge of something invisible but powerful, an emotional storm building inside you. A look that cuts too deep, a comment that pierces your pride, a memory that resurfaces when you least expect it. Suddenly, the tide rises. You're seconds away from saying something you might regret, doing something you can't take back. But in that split second, a choice appears. Do you react or do you respond? The ancient Stoics, quiet architects of inner mastery, left us a map. It's not a set of rules etched in stone, but a living compass, designed for moments exactly like this. When the storm brews inside, they don't tell you to suppress it, they invite you to understand it. Step 1, awareness. Before you can steer the ship, you must know the storm is there. It's not enough to say, "I'm angry." You must ask, why? Where is it coming from? Is this moment truly the cause, or is it simply the trigger for something deeper? The Stoics believed the most powerful knowledge is self-knowledge. To them, your mind wasn't a battlefield, it was a mirror, one you must learn to gaze into with both honesty and compassion. In a world obsessed with noise, speed, and reaction, there exists a forgotten art, the art of presence. Not the kind of presence that performs for the outside world, but the quiet, unwavering presence that listens deeply, not to others, but to your own inner world. That's where Stoicism and mindfulness meet, not as philosophies in opposition, but as ancient companions, walking side by side on the same silent path. I once met a woman who cradled her feverish child in the dead of night. The baby writhed, crying uncontrollably, yet her eyes remained steady, her voice a whisper of calm. It wasn't detachment, it was depth. She wasn't escaping the moment, she was completely inside it. When I asked how she found such peace amid chaos, she smiled and said, "I just stay here, right here, now." Mindfulness isn't some distant mountaintop practice. It's the act of coming home to yourself, again and again. It's in the sip of tea you actually taste, the breath you finally notice, the thought you observe without judgment. It's in the moment you put your phone down, not to escape, but to return. Now imagine combining that still awareness with the strength of Stoicism, the ability to choose your response based on values, not moods. You don't just become calmer, you become anchored. The Stoics, though they never used the term mindfulness, lived by its essence. They didn't just act, they watched themselves act. They didn't just feel, they studied the roots of their feelings. They didn't escape life, they examined it, moment by moment, with the precision of a sculptor and the compassion of a sage. Start simply, sit down, breathe. Feel the breath as it moves through you, not to control it, but to follow it. Let your attention return each time it wanders. This isn't just a way to relax. This is training, mental resistance training, the kind that lets you stay steady when life starts shaking. Or take a walk without filling your ears with distractions. Listen to your footsteps, feel the breeze, taste the silence. Ordinary things done with full awareness become sacred. You might try a body scan at the end of your day. Lie still, slowly moving your attention through your body, noticing tension, emotions, forgotten aches. You're not fixing anything. You're simply acknowledging what's already there. And in doing so, you create space. Space for healing, space for wisdom. Then bring that same mindfulness into your conversations. Listen not just to words, but to what's beneath them. Don't just wait to respond, truly receive. This kind of presence changes people. It softens conflict, it deepens trust, and it aligns perfectly with the Stoic belief that every person is a rational soul fighting their own silent battle. When you live this way, every small act becomes a chance to train your mind and awaken your heart. Every interaction becomes a sacred exchange, and each day becomes an invitation, not just to survive, but to live with clarity, strength, and intention. The fusion of Stoicism and mindfulness isn't just a technique, it's a way of being, unmoved by chaos, rooted in purpose, and alive to the only moment that has ever truly belonged to you, this one. It doesn't begin in lecture halls or temples. It starts in places you already know too well. The crowded office, the dinner table, the awkward silence after a misunderstanding. Real life, real pressure, real stakes. Picture this, a Monday morning, a meeting room thick with tension. Someone throws you under the bus, subtly, strategically, and with a smile. Your chest tightens, your jaw clenches. 100 comebacks rise to your tongue like sparks on dry grass. And then you pause. No one sees the battle happening inside you. No one hears the question echoing in your mind. Is this the moment I lose myself? Or the moment I reclaim myself? That's where Stoicism steps out of theory and walks beside you in real time. Not as a voice that shouts, but as a steady hand on your shoulder reminding you, you get to choose. The journey of becoming someone who responds instead of reacts doesn't require grand gestures. It begins before the world even wakes. It starts the moment you open your eyes and set an intention, not just to get through the day, but to move through it with mindfulness, with strength, with grace. You might write it down or whisper it to yourself in the quiet kitchen light. Today, I will choose my responses. And that intention becomes your compass. Later, when challenges arise, and they always will, you return to that center. Maybe it's stepping away from your screen before replying to an email laced with passive aggression. Maybe it's taking a walk around the block after an argument, just to let the heat dissolve before truth can surface. And at day's end, when the noise fades and you're alone with your thoughts, that's when the true work begins. Not to judge, but to reflect. When did I hold my ground? When did I slip? What did I learn today? This isn't a test. There is no final grade. Just a quiet commitment to meet yourself honestly, consistently, kindly. Each of these small moments becomes a thread, and soon you'll realize you're weaving something, a life, a character, a version of yourself that's deliberate, resilient, and deeply human. And here's the miracle. When you live this way, you don't just change your inner world. You shift the temperature of the space around you. Your steadiness becomes contagious. Your thoughtful pauses become invitations for others to do the same. This is not the armor of indifference. It is the discipline of presence. And when paired with mindfulness, it becomes a quiet revolution. Stoicism lives not in abstract ideals, but in your daily choices. The sigh you release instead of shouting. The space you give instead of pushing back. The truth you speak not with force, but with clarity. And through these small sacred acts, you begin to write a new kind of life, one not ruled by impulse but led by purpose. I once knew a man, unremarkable by appearance, quiet by nature. He didn't command a room or speak in clever quotes, but there was something unmistakable about him. In every word he chose, in every gesture he made, there was intention, precision. As if he didn't just move through life, he sculpted it, one decision at a time. I watched him once in the middle of a tense confrontation. Voices were raised, accusations hung heavy in the air. Others lunged to defend, to deflect, to dominate. But he stood still, calm, not cold, anchored. He listened, he breathed. And when he finally spoke, the entire room softened, not because he won, but because he didn't need to fight. That's when I understood. Mastery doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. This ability to respond with clarity instead of reacting out of emotion, it's not a gift bestowed at birth. It's a quiet discipline, one shaped through repetition, failure, and the unwavering choice to grow. It begins with a promise, not to anyone else, just to yourself. A vow to stop being a puppet of the moment and to become the author of your own presence. You don't need to climb a mountain or retreat to a monastery to do this. It starts in the smallest rituals, choosing silence after offense, taking a breath before sending that message, journaling at night, not about what you did, but about how you were. And with time, those choices compound. They become patterns. Those patterns become your nature. And one day, without realizing it, you'll look in the mirror and meet a version of yourself who doesn't flinch, doesn't lash out, because they know exactly who they are. But this transformation isn't just personal, it ripples outward. Every time you choose wisdom over impulse, you bring peace into a room. Every time you pause instead of react, you become a model, an unspoken invitation for others to meet life differently too. This is what the Stoics meant when they spoke of virtue, not as an idea, but as a way of standing in the world, a way of moving through it with stillness, courage, and intention. You're not chasing perfection. You're not becoming emotionless. You're becoming someone who feels deeply, but responds wisely. And that is a kind of quiet power the world desperately needs. So if you ever wonder whether this path is worth it, remember the man in the room who didn't raise his voice, yet changed everything. And know, you can be that person too. Not someday, but starting now. Imagine standing in a darkened room where chaos once echoed and emotions once ran wild. There's a sliver of light slipping through the edge of a closed door. It's faint, barely there, but you take a step toward it, then another. With each step, something shifts. The space begins to breathe. The noise quiets. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. That's what this journey is. Not a grand transformation in a single moment, not a flash of enlightenment, but a subtle, powerful unfolding. The kind that takes place in silence, in solitude, in the choices no one sees. I used to believe change came like thunder, dramatic and undeniable. But I've come to understand it often arrives like a soft wind, like the decision to say nothing when your pride wants to roar, like the pause before a storm where stillness is the greatest strength. Response over reaction. It sounds simple, but it is the work of a lifetime. It means standing in the fire of misunderstanding and refusing to burn others just to feel heard. It means seeing the sharp edge of someone's words and choosing not to strike back, but to understand what sharpened them in the first place. It means meeting the chaos of the world not with more noise, but with clarity, calm, and conscious choice. And no, it's not always easy. But every time you make that choice, something inside you solidifies. Your values, your integrity, your peace. Stoicism doesn't ask you to feel less. It asks you to feel fully and then decide who you want to be in the face of those feelings. It's not a shield. It's a compass, a reminder that even when you lose control of what happens to you, you never lose control of how you show up. Each decision to pause, each breath taken instead of a word shouted, each journaled reflection. They aren't isolated acts. They're threads in the fabric of your character, woven not in ease but in effort, in courage. And here's the truth. When you start living like this, it doesn't just change your inner world. It changes the tone of your conversations, the energy in your home, the way strangers experience your presence, because you become something rare, a person who responds from wisdom, not from wounds. So let this be your reminder. Every moment is a choice, every challenge is a canvas, and every breath is a chance to begin again. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to be present, because how you respond becomes who you are, and that, more than anything, is the legacy you leave behind.